My boyfriend invited his friends for dinner. I was happy to prepare dinner for them because I love cooking. While I was making food, suddenly I felt a pair of arms wrap around my waist from behind. A soft, casual hug. I smiled to myself, assuming it was my boyfriend being playful, like he sometimes did. Then a few seconds later, I heard my boyfriend voice loud and clear, laughing along with his friends in the TV lounge. That evening felt like any normal weekend. My boyfriend had invited a few of his friends over, and I was more than happy to help by preparing dinner for everyone. I loved cooking, and it made me feel good to contribute, especially when I saw how excited he was to host them. The house was filled with laughter, the noise from the TV drifting into the kitchen while I busied myself with chopping vegetables and checking the dishes in the oven. I was standing by the stove, focused on the food, when suddenly I felt a pair of arms wrap around my waist from behind. A soft, casual hug, nothing aggressive, just warm and familiar. I smiled to myself, assuming it was my boyfriend being playful, like he sometimes did when he thought no one was watching. I didn't even turn around. I just kept stirring the sauce, feeling a strange sense of comfort in that small gesture. But then, a few seconds later, I heard his voice loud and clear, laughing along with his friends in the TV lounge. My hands froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. If he's over there? Then who is standing behind me? Panic rising in my chest, I quickly pushed the person away and spun around. To my horror, it wasn't my boyfriend. It was one of his friends, someone I barely knew. He looked at me with a weird, guilty smile, like he was trying to act casual, as if nothing had happened. I felt a wave of discomfort and confusion wash over me. For a second, I stood there, speechless. A million thoughts ran through my head. Should I shout? Should I tell my boyfriend immediately? But I didn't. A heavy fear anchored me in place. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want to ruin the evening. And somewhere deep inside, I was scared. Scared that if I told him, he might react badly, maybe blame me, maybe fight with his friend in a way that would spiral out of control. I didn't want to be the reason for that. So I stayed silent. I forced a tight, awkward smile and turned back to the stove, pretending nothing had happened, even though my hands were trembling slightly. Later that night, after the guests left, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe it had just been a stupid moment and he would realize it was wrong. But it wasn't over. The same friend who had hugged me started texting me, casual at first. But then the messages slowly became more personal, more uncomfortable. I felt trapped between fear and guilt, unsure of what to do next. Days passed, but that night stayed with me like a heavy shadow I couldn't shake off. I tried to act normal around my boyfriend, smiling when he smiled, laughing when he joked, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same. I couldn't be. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped with anxiety. It was him again, the friend who had crossed the line. At first, the messages were harmless. Thanks for dinner. You cook so well, or you looked really nice yesterday. But slowly, they became more personal, more uncomfortable. He would text late at night, sending small comments that made my skin crawl. Like, I wish we could talk more. Just you and me, or don't tell anyone I hugged you, it was special, right? I felt trapped between fear and guilt. I wanted to block him, scream at him to stop, but at the same time, I was scared. Scared that if I reacted, things would get worse. Scared that if my boyfriend found out, he might not trust me anymore. Might think I had done something wrong. I didn't know how to protect myself without ruining everything around me. Meanwhile, my boyfriend started to notice the changes in me. At first, it was small things, like how I kept my phone face down all the time, or how I flinched slightly whenever I received a new message. I started staying busy on purpose, always finding some task to do just to avoid sitting still with my thoughts. I wasn't as playful as before, not as open with him. One evening, while we were sitting together watching a movie, he paused it and looked at me carefully. "You're different lately," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You seem distracted. Is something wrong?" I quickly shook my head, forcing a smile. "No, everything's fine. Just tired, I guess." But inside, my heart ached. I hated lying to him. I hated feeling so alone, carrying a secret that kept growing heavier every day. I wanted so badly to tell him, to trust him. But the fear of what might happen if I did kept my mouth shut. That night, lying beside him in bed, I stared at the ceiling while he slept peacefully next to me. I felt tears slip silently down my face. I wished more than anything that I could go back to before that hug, before the texts, before the guilt and fear that were slowly pulling me away from the person I loved the most. And deep inside, I knew that the longer I stayed silent, the harder it would be to find my way back. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. The messages didn't stop. Sometimes they were subtle, a compliment, a harmless question, but other times, they made my skin crawl. I can keep secrets better than you think. Or, I know you liked the hug. You didn't push me right away. I felt trapped. Every time I looked at my boyfriend, guilt burned in my chest. He had started treating me even more carefully now. Noticing how distant I had become. He would reach for my hand, and sometimes I would pull away without thinking. He would ask me about my day, and I would give short, empty answers. I knew he felt the growing wall between us, and yet, I couldn't bring myself to break it down. I thought maybe if I ignored the situation long enough, it would go away. But it didn't. One afternoon, while my boyfriend was out running errands, my phone buzzed again. It was a new message from that friend, a bold one this time. I want to see you alone. We can keep it between us. It'll be our little secret. My stomach twisted in horror. I locked my phone immediately, my hands trembling. That was the moment I realized it wasn't harmless anymore. It wasn't just awkward messages. It was pressure. It was manipulation. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, tears stinging my eyes. What do I do now? I felt powerless, and worse, ashamed. When my boyfriend came home, he immediately sensed something was wrong. I barely looked at him, pretending to be busy folding laundry that didn't even need folding. Hey, he said softly, coming to stand beside me. Look at me. I froze. Slowly, I lifted my head. And when our eyes met, I saw it, the hurt, the confusion, the worry. This isn't just tiredness anymore, he said, his voice low and serious. You're not okay. Please, talk to me. For a long moment, I said nothing. I wanted to tell him so badly. I wanted to fall into his arms and let it all out. But fear had built such a strong cage around me that the words choked in my throat. Instead, I shook my head and whispered, I'm fine. But I wasn't. And he knew it. Later that night, something happened that changed everything. My boyfriend was looking for a charger, and he picked up my phone from the table to move it. Just as another message popped up on the screen. His friend's name lit up clearly. And even before he could stop himself, he saw the words. When are we going to be alone again? I can't stop thinking about you. Silence filled the room like a bomb had dropped. I turned around and saw him standing there, my phone in his hand. His face drained of color, his jaw clenching. He looked at me, confused, betrayed, heartbroken. What the hell is this? He asked, his voice shaking between anger and disbelief. In that moment, the fear that had kept me silent all this time exploded inside me. The secret was out, but not the way I had wanted it to be. Tears welled up in my eyes as I opened my mouth to finally tell the truth. Every painful piece of it. My throat felt tight as I stood there facing him. My hands shaking, my heart racing so hard it hurt. I had no choice now, the truth had broken through the walls. I had tried so hard to build. Please listen to me, I said, my voice cracking with fear and emotion. It's not what you think. I didn't do anything wrong. Please just listen. Tears streamed down my face as I began to tell him everything, from the very beginning. I told him about how I was cooking that night. How someone hugged me from behind. How I thought it was him until I heard his voice from the TV lounge. How my heart had dropped. How I had pushed the guy away and realized it was his friend. I told him how scared and confused I was. How I didn't know what to do. And how I was afraid to tell him because I thought he would get angry, maybe even blame me. I told him about all the texts. The way they started off normal and slowly turned into something terrifying. How trapped and dirty it made me feel. How trapped and dirty it made me feel. How every day I was carrying the weight of it alone, just trying to protect him. Protect us, but in the process, I had almost lost myself. By the time I finished, I could barely breathe. I wiped my tears with the sleeve of my shirt. My whole body trembling, waiting for his reaction. For a long, heavy moment, he just stared at me, saying nothing. I felt like the world had frozen in place. I was terrified he wouldn't believe me. That he would turn away. That he would see me differently. But then he stepped closer and pulled me into his arms. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry you had to go through this alone. You should have told me. But thank you for telling me now. I believe you. I trust you. I broke down, crying harder than I had in days. Holding on to him like he was my only anchor in a storm I couldn't control. After a few minutes, when I had calmed down a little, he pulled back and looked at me. His jaw set tight with anger, but not at me. We're not letting him get away with this, he said, his voice low and steady. Call him. Tell him to come over. Right now. Fear flickered in my chest. Are you sure? What if he doesn't? He'll come, my boyfriend said firmly. He thinks he can get away with it. He won't see it coming. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and sent a simple message. Can you come over? I'm home alone. The reply came almost instantly. Of course. Give me 15 minutes. I put the phone down, my heart pounding in my ears. My boyfriend stood beside me, silent. But the fury burning in his eyes said everything. The next 15 minutes felt like a lifetime. I sat there, every second dragging like an hour, while he paced the floor, planning in his mind how he was going to confront the person he once called a friend. And deep down, I knew, whatever happened next, I wasn't alone anymore. The clock on the wall ticked louder than ever, every second tightening the knot in my stomach. I sat frozen on the couch, my hands clutched tightly together, while my boyfriend stood silently near the door, his entire body tense with rage. His eyes didn't leave the entrance once. The moment we heard a knock, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was like the air itself thickened with anger. My boyfriend looked at me, giving a small nod, as if silently saying, "Stay back. I'll handle this." He opened the door. There he stood, the so-called friend, grinning casually, like he had done nothing wrong. His disgusting confidence made my stomach turn. But before he could even step inside properly, my boyfriend grabbed him by the collar and slammed him hard against the wall. "You think you're smart, huh?" he growled, his voice low and deadly. "You think you can touch her, harass her, and get away with it?" The guy stuttered, trying to defend himself. But my boyfriend didn't give him the chance. With all the anger and betrayal bottled up inside, he punched him, once, twice, 3 times, each blow fueled by the pain I had carried alone for so long. The guy tried to shield himself, tried to speak. But my boyfriend's fists kept raining down. Pure, raw fury behind every hit. "She trusted you," he roared, throwing him to the floor. "I trusted you. And you used that to make her feel scared in her own home." The guy struggled to get up. But my boyfriend kicked him back down without hesitation, making sure he stayed on the ground, humiliated. Broken, exactly how he deserved to feel. "You don't ever come near her again," my boyfriend spat, breathing heavily, towering over him. "If I ever see you near her, near us, again, you'll regret even being born." The guy didn't dare say a word. Blood dripped from his nose. His face bruised and swollen. His body crumpled against the floor like the coward he was. My boyfriend grabbed him by the shirt one last time and dragged him to the door, shoving him outside with brutal force. "Get out. And don't ever show your face again," he snarled. Without looking back, the guy stumbled away into the night, battered, defeated, and exposed for the predator he truly was. My boyfriend slammed the door shut and locked it, turning back to me. His hands were bloodied, his breathing still rough. But when he looked at me, his eyes softened. He walked straight over and pulled me into his arms, holding me tight, like he was afraid of letting go. "You're safe now," he whispered into my hair. "I swear, no one will ever hurt you again. Not while I'm here." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe it. I was safe. I was loved. And most importantly, I wasn't alone anymore. The nightmare was finally over.